Top of the hour, we'll start our meeting. We start with the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Clerk Cody, roll call, please.
Supervisor Gunning?
Here.
Treasurer Rice?
Present.
Trustee Hope?
Here.
Trustee Melky?
Here.
Trustee Lanner?
Here.
Trustee Worley?
Here.
Clerk Cody here.
All right. On to item 4, which is the approval of the agenda.
I'll make a motion. Oh, that's right. We've got to add that one.
Somebody like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda
No.
with the addition of
Okay.
the addition of the moratorium added to item A under new business and move the other two down. Making A, B, and B, C.
Support.
Okay, we have a motion and a support. Discussion? Yes, sir.
There were a couple items in the minutes, and I think those have been forwarded to be corrected, but I didn't know if you'd want me to point those out.
That would be in the consent agenda, though, correct?
Yeah, but if we're approving the agenda, we would need to take that out, potentially. That's why I'm raising that now.
Okay.
And we don't have to take it out. It's short enough. I can do that, but I don't know if there are other
I think it's
issues with the
been
minutes.
addressed, hasn't it?
But I just felt other members should hear
Okay.
the changes that we requested.
Just remove that.
Do it when we do the consent.
I'm sorry?
When we do the consent agenda.
Okay,
That's when
and I'm fine with that. I just want to make sure it's a separate item so that,
Okay.
okay.
Yep. Okay, so we have a motion to add a new item in, which would be item A in new business, which would be discussion of a moratorium on gravel pit operations. So we have a motion. Any further discussion? Seeing none, we take this to vote. This would be approving the agenda with the addition of new item, which would be item A, and moving new business A and B down to B and C. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, agenda approved. We move to presentations. Mark?
Yeah, I'd just like to take a minute and introduce Mr. Rodney Nanny to you all and to the board and to the citizens. He's our new Community Economic Development Director. He started January 6th. Rodney is a certified planner with 20-plus years of experience supporting Planning Commission, Zoning Board of Appeals, involved with business attraction programs, zoning code rewrites, master plan development, and related activities to things that fall in typically in those departments. I think he's going to be a great addition, already proving to be a great addition to the team in support of the administration and by extension the board. So I encourage you to, when you're around Township Hall at some point, stop in, say hello. So welcome.
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 Thank you. Very glad to be here.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, moving from item 5, no public hearings, we move to public comment. This is going to be restricted to 3 minutes regarding items on this agenda. This will be an opportunity for comments only. Questions will not be answered by the board. If anyone would like to come forward, we'll open public comment at 7:04.
I'm Denise Richards. I live at 2283 East Millbrook Road. I got a call last night from Mark, thank you for that, to let me know that this item was going to be on the agenda. And I wanted to just present some topics that are concerning to me regarding this moratorium and regulation changes. I personally think that updates to the requirements are definitely needed. If any of you were at the planning meeting in December, you would know that the discussion seemed to create more questions than answers. And I think a lot of that had to do with the lack of clarity in some of the regulations and some of the application processes. Mr. Beebe said at the meeting that you must do mining in agricultural areas because that's the only areas available to do it in. And he said it's in your zoning and we're following your zoning guidelines. So given that, I think zoning needs to be reconsidered. And I'm going to just, without any particular order, make some comments. I think that we need to provide fair practices regarding transparency for notification of surrounding residents of SUPs. Agricultural areas, obviously, homes are farther apart. Only 2 people were notified of the SUP, and that had made contentious feelings for some of the neighbors that were not notified that that was happening. I think that would be a good addition. I think 14 days is an insufficient time for notification for the proposal. For example, I was unable to retain my attorney to get advice about the meeting in 14 days. Sometimes I'm out of town for 14 days in a row. I wouldn't have known about the meeting if that were to happen. The newspaper, the local newspaper that we have, is not an adequate source for notification. I think we either need to make a system of electronic notification or snail mail. Let everybody know. It's only fair that people get to know. Most of these people in this room did not receive any notification that we're at the planning meeting or tonight. A couple years ago when we were here doing this, the master plan said about land, when the land is gone, there isn't any more. I couldn't find that statement in the master plan. Maybe it's been removed in the past 2 years or I just couldn't find it. But I think it's still true that that's a reason for not allowing SUP in agricultural areas. When the land is gone, it's gone. When making an application, require the applicant to provide transparency. For example, the SUP says approximately 5 years. At the meeting, it was revealed that this would be at least a 20-year endeavor. That's not okay to say 5 years and then mean 20 years. When making applications, require the applicant to give quantitative evidence, exact measurements, not comments like when asked, will there be crushing involved? And the response was, we can't rule out crushing. Is that a yes or a no? We don't know what's going to happen there. Is there crushing or not crushing? And crushing makes a difference in the air quality. Creating measurable objectives. This is my thing. Instead of these subjective criterion for our application process. Also, let's talk about assurances versus requirements. This applicant relied on reputation in part for assurances, but he did not in the application indicate that the property was for sale. So his reputation for assurances of how well he would do the job is moot if the property is sold. Zoning, let's guarantee some oversight. Let's do that. Zoning for agriculture preserves agricultural property. Zoning for mining should be a separate zone. Agriculture property is not mining property, and I'm aware how vagary needs to happen. A reasonable time frame of operation, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. is not reasonable. And let's have the township set the guidelines, not the applicant say, I'm self-restricting 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Who's
Ms.
in charge
Richards,
of that?
I hate to interrupt. Yeah, you're way past. I can let you go a little
Thank you.
longer, but
Yes or no?
yes. If you want to go ahead and wrap it up real quickly,
I
then.
do. I want to say that at the meeting, Mr. Beebe indicated that it was a wild accusation being thrown around that housing prices would be of lesser value when next to a pit. So I wanted to bring research to say that was not a wild accusation. Dr. Haidt from OBrien University research concluded, and I quote, the chance of a gravel mine not having an adverse effect on housing values is 1 in 1,000. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And would anyone else like to come up forward for public comment? Yeah, if you could state your name.
Martin O'Brien, live on the corner of Lincoln and Deerfield. I wish she could have spoke longer. She seems to be more prepared than I am. I just found out about this about a half hour ago. My concerns, I can't stop you guys from voting in a gravel pit, or whatever the case may be, whatever ends up down there. My concerns are the roads. I've lived on that corner now for almost 7 years, and I've watched Lincoln Road deteriorate pretty quickly. We get quite a bit of truck traffic from a gentleman south of us anyway. I don't know what their plan is or how they're hauling in or hauling out. My concern is, since I've been there, there's been 4 accidents, one of them aerovac'd out. That's a really bad corner. I can't tell you that with truck traffic, an accident's waiting to happen, but I sit and watch people run that stop sign daily. So my concerns really are the roads, the dust, the truck traffic, pretty basic stuff. The rest I leave in your hands. I agree with the young lady about having a gravel pit next to your property, etc. But again, we can only voice our opinion, and we have to leave the rest of it to your hands. I guess I would ask you to think about whether your property was involved or not. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm Sally Bellinger. I live on Lincoln Road, about a half a mile from Millbrook. I'm also a trustee to Lincoln Township. And I want to add to what this young gentleman just said. In 2005, we had Lincoln Road limestoned. And the first day that it was limestoned, there were many people discovered that you could go from Blanchard Road all the way on the other side, perhaps to Pickard, or maybe River Road. We have, like you mentioned, we have a business south on Lincoln Road on the corner of Walton and Lincoln Road. They have enormous amount of trucks that go down our road every day. And from April till November, it's constant. Speed is unreal. I myself have had people from Lincoln Township call me and ask me, Sally, what can you do about it? So I called, naive me, I called the weighmaster. And he says, well, ma'am, the speed limit on that road is 55 miles an hour. I says, but do they have to drive 55 miles an hour? I retired in 2002 with the hopes that I could walk down that road every morning for exercise. It is not safe to be on that road anymore. And also another concern I have is Union Township prepared to spend a lot of money maintaining the roads, because from our road in Lincoln Township with limestone, in the last 15 years, it had its wear and tear, and we are looking to the possibility we're going to have to do something about that road, those 2 miles, but at $70,000 a mile, it's going to be very hard for us to maintain that. We are not a poor township, but we don't have a lot of money to go around, and we like to spend our money on our constituents so they can look at us and say, our township board is doing things for us, and we try very hard to do that. From Millbrook to Deerfield, it's not bad, but it's not good either. Down in front of where, part of where the pit would be, the first half a mile, when we get rain, it's like you've got trenches like this. That needs to be fixed regardless of what happens. Also, Deerfield Road, Lincoln from Deerfield to Broomfield is bad. And my husband and I have lived out there for almost 60 years. and we've seen it deteriorate. And during that time, the only thing I've ever seen is, let's call it a patch or whatever you want to call it, from the new city water, whatever you call it, down to Broomfield. And even that's beginning to see its wear and tear. So, I repeat, my concern for Lincoln Township, and I know wherever you put that driveway, if it's on Millbrook, whether you go east or west, it's going to beat the heck out of the roads. If you go north or south, you're going to beat the heck out of road in Union. And Lincoln Township, you're going to beat the heck out of ours. And we will be at Union Township complaining because we have all we can do to maintain our roads. And we don't need these extra trucks, which I realize they have the right to do it. And I'm not arguing with that point. But also, it is the safety. And like Mr. O'Brien said, the traffic, personally, I worked at the university for almost 30 years, and I would go down Lincoln all the way to Broomfield to go to Central. And I don't know how many times I creep by that intersection of Deerfield and Lincoln because I've almost been hit 3 times. And it's not safe. People just, and in general, something needs to be done about the speed on those roads.
Mrs. Bellinger, I've let you go over about an extra couple of minutes, but if you'd like to go ahead and finish up your statement.
No, I think I've said all I can say. I
Okay.
realize, I mean, if you were here the last time I was here, I was very irate about the gravel pit because for me, I've lived in a farming area all my life. And to see a field of 40 acres, flat ground, good farmland, I would say be destroyed by a pit is really very sad because you change the whole dimension of our area. And my husband and I live on a centennial farm, actually almost a sesquicentennial farm. It's been in the Bellinger family since 1869. And we would kind of like to reserve what we have in that area. It's very important to us, and I know it's very important to the people who live in that area. But I know there's nothing, I mean, you have to make the decision. I don't agree with it. I don't want to see it happen. I don't like the consequences that could come about it. But sometimes there's nothing, sometimes things are just beyond your control.
Yeah.
But I thank you for listening to me. I have kind of, hopefully I've represented the people, my people in Lincoln Township, as well as the people who live in Union close by. Because we are almost like a family. Most of those families have lived in that area for 50 or 60 years, so anyway, thank you.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi.
State your name.
Vonda Kushmal. I own property exactly right across from where this gravel pit is going to be. I found out about the meeting about 2 hours ago. I wish I had some notes, but I don't. There's just a couple things I just want to address. Number one is the road situation. Like Sally said, from Blanchard Road to Rosebush, Lincoln Road, you can bypass, it's the first road west of Mount Pleasant that you can bypass Mount Pleasant and have a straight shot through. It is a busier road. It's busier all the time. My family, my sister is a 4-H leader, and she just moved into my parents' farm, which she has 4-H meetings at 5620 South Lincoln. And there is children and horses, and they meet throughout the whole summer. This is a situation if you're going to have a gravel pit and big trucks driving by. It's a dangerous situation. Also, CMU has 10K, 5Ks, and they go out that way. There is hundreds and hundreds of people jogging and riding bikes and jogging and with letters on their back. They do that route down Lincoln Road, Deerfield, Lincoln, past my house, which is between Millbrook and Walton, 10Ks. lots of people, and you're gonna put gravel trucks down this road now with more traffic. That's a huge concern, is their safety. I wish I was informed more about the meetings that's going on here. Like I said, I would have been more prepared with more things to say. Those two topics is a huge concern, is the safety of people. And also the value of the property. That's a whole nother issue that we all need to address. But the main thing is these children, CMU, are they gonna reroute their competition and that because of what could happen? Those corners, the dust, oh my goodness. I've lived on Lincoln Road. James and Phyllis Recker were my parents. They've recently just passed. And the dust on these roads, we get 2 brines a year. And my mom had, before she passed, she had breathing problems. We would call to have a brine, the dust, we couldn't open the windows. Huge problem. So, that's an issue. Are they gonna tarby the road because of a gravel pit? I would hope so, for the people that live there, that's all I have to say.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Hello.
State your name.
Yeah, my name is Brian Morris. I live at 1140 Eastwood Drive. I helped to start a Facebook group for this situation just because I found out there was only 2 people that were notified. So if there's anything that you could do to change that and help the notification process, that would be good. Some of the reasons why I jumped in, because I do understand commerce and business, small businesses especially, but I feel like this gravel pit would be taking away from everyone around it, and I don't feel like all small businesses do that, I heard. So that's why I jumped in. I thought it was inappropriate. I felt like it was just before Christmas, no one was notified, it would have passed, and then that's their new year. Here's this gravel pit that is now gonna be the end of your road. So those are the reasons that I got involved. After I was involved and I started the page, people were sending me messages, so I'm just gonna discuss some of the things that they described to me. I guess the S curve at the end of Millbrook Road is a danger already and has quite a few accidents. I've seen an accident there. So it's already dangerous, and to add these trucks that will now be, I don't think they move as fast as a Taurus or anything like that. And so that's an issue. The children, just the driving back and forth, there was a mother who described her kids playing out in front of their house, and then that struck a nerve with me, just to think people live in the country for a reason, because they enjoy being outside. They're not shut-ins, and this is really gonna change their life. I mean, the noise is something that I just can't imagine 12 hours a day, even if you change it to regular 8 hours a day, for anyone who's retired. There goes their enjoyment, their peace and quiet, their investment. So those are some of the things that I thought about. I went to the Hubsher's pit as well, just to see what it looks like, and the road that you can actually go to their way station is right on a dirt road as well. There's a dilapidated house crumbling, and all the other houses around look like they're not being taken care of that well either. I don't think anyone wants to live there, and I don't think anyone could sell their house if you had a gravel pit there. Some of the other things I heard about were reclamation, about bringing it back to farmland, which I'm not an expert on, so I don't know. I didn't have, it felt like some of the other people at the last meeting had an idea of what the clay would do if you take out all of the gravel, and it sounded like it was something to look at. The dust was another thing that I thought was a hazard, and you're going to be causing people to shut in, which again, that's not why they live in the country. So those are the concerns that I had, and I hope we can just say no to this gravel pit in this area, and I hope that they find another farm in an area where there's no one around it, where, I mean, the person who owns the farm will be getting the money, so if they are okay with the noise, the dust, that's fine. But I feel like you're taking away from everyone else to allow this. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank
And would anyone else like to come forward?
Hi, good evening. I'm Jim Salad, and I'm the reason we're having this discussion. So, for those that don't know me, I reside at 6422 South Whiteville Road, which is just into Lincoln Township. But I am president and owner of the Isabella Corporation, which is located in the West DDA on Commerce Street over by the asphalt plant for the past 20 years, and we've been in business 25 years before that. So we've been in the community for a long time. Second generation, I'm the second generation. My two sons are going to be the third generation, and one of those is the other co-owner of of the property that we're asking for the special use permit. The purpose of the zoning plan that you spend an awful lot of time is to kind of give citizens like myself a roadmap as to what we can and can't do, and what options we can legally pursue. Our decision to pursue this sand pit, special use SUP, if we want to call it that, was based on the current zoning rules that we submitted at the time, in which mining is a permitted activity with a special use permit. We've already spent thousands of dollars preparing the documents and information to be able just to get to the Planning Commission to be able to make the request. And the motion before you, the justification is based on the health, safety, environmental, and general welfare of persons and property within the township. The connotation has been that somehow whatever operations that are out there, we can just, it's the Wild West, there's nobody going to come look at it. I would suggest you talk to any miner, go talk to Hupshers, go talk to, we have a sister company that does mining down in Vestaburg. The M. Shaw book is that thick of training, records, and that. Dust, you know, we talk about dust. My employees are at the epicenter of any dust there. So that is heavily regulated. So the notion that somehow we're just going to go make a mess, whatever we want, yeah, there's plenty of people that are going to come down on me if we don't follow the law. And there are plenty of existing regulations on the books to protect the health and safety. A couple of the changes on my concerns are the couple of proposed changes mentioned in the background information as far as moving the setbacks or changing the slope angles reduces the amount of material we can take out. We have a fixed cost to be able to build the infrastructure, to go through the permitting, to maintain the roads, and if the deposit is smaller, that obviously, you know, costs us money. The moratorium that's proposed, just the moratorium, will obviously prevent us from doing anything this year. Because for the 120 days with another 60 days, and then at that point, we're able to go back to the Planning Commission and start the process. So that pretty well just wipes it out for this year's. And again, we tried to anticipate being able to have the thing ready to go for the next construction season. This is a little snarky, but I'm not an attorney, but I really don't personally take offense to being singled out my case because the laws maybe aren't, or the current zoning isn't quite what you'd like it to be when this happened. But I think changing the rules once the game is started doesn't meet any basic fairness. We are prepared to work with the Planning Commission. We heard the word process, application process, several times from everybody. It is a process. Did I expect to walk in there and leave with a special use permit? Not a chance. I knew it was gonna be contentious. I'd be back there if it affected me. You have a significant infrastructure with the Planning Commission to address those concerns of these people behind me, to make sure that, you know, issues such as dust, noise, are mitigated to the extent they can be. It would be an understatement to look at Hupsher's Deerfield operation, which encompasses sections of ground and millions of acres, or millions of,
Mr. Zalet, I got you at 5 minutes right
All right.
now, but you go ahead
Thank you.
and, go ahead and
No,
close
I
your, finish your
respectfully-
statements.
Thank you for your time. I respectfully request that the board allow the special application permit process to proceed without the moratorium, and we will do our best to work with the Planning Commission to make sure that all their concerns are addressed. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I'm Gary Cushma, I live on Lincoln Road. My main concern is all the semis. The road on Lincoln Road is a mess already. It's been a mess for 25 years. When's it gonna change? I mean, you go down there, it rains, mud holes all over the place. You're lucky to go down the road 15 miles an hour. What are you gonna do it with the semis doing that? Then you got through the summertime, all the dust, you got all the semis with the extra traffic going up and down Lincoln Road, not only from Lincoln to all the way to Blanchard Road, but the crisscross ways also. But there you go again. Dust, there's no controlling it. The county can't afford to take and wet it down all the time. So we sit there in our house with the windows shut, and I've got a log house. Well, it's covered with dust. Would you like to buy my house with full of dust that these semis and stuff come through it already? When you have something like this, you're gonna have a lot more traffic. It's just not gonna be good. The road, the concern is not good. I mean, I've never seen that road in good shape in the springtime in 25 years. I mean, it seems like all you guys do is push it off from the farmland, throw it up in the center, and the mud sprays. 10, 15 miles an hour going down the road. I have to clean my truck every time it rains because it's filthy. I mean, but like I say, the semis gonna do a lot of damage to the roads. It's gonna hurt the environment. It's gonna hurt the people's houses that live around that. You know, noise-wise, probably not us, because we're a little farther enough away, but they're noisy. Not only that, they're not good to look at when you drive by them. That's my main concern.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And would anyone else like to come forward for public comment at this time? Seeing none, we close public comment at 7:33. We do appreciate all the comments. I know this is a sensitive topic, so we'll do our best. Moving on to item 8. This is going to be reports and board comments. We have 2 different items to address as far as vacancies are concerned in the Planning Commission and the CRC. At this time, I would like to see more applicants come forward before I decide to make any kind of recommendations or nominations for the expiring seats. We've got, I believe, 2 more meetings before those expiration dates if we have to take the time. I don't believe we've received really any extra applicants since our last meeting. So I do want to fill the vacant seat because we're going on 5 months on that one, and we need to get that filled. So at this time, I would like to nominate James Thering for the vacant seat on the Planning Commission, vacated by Trustee Milky when he moved up to the planning, from the Planning Commission to Trustee. And I don't have my agenda up, so the expiration date on that is 2/15/21. So that will be a one-year appointment.
Just so if we go 2 more meetings, we have a meeting on the 22nd, and then we would have one 3 weeks later, because it's one of those quirky type of situations you get with the
Yeah.
calendar. So that would bring us to what? What's the March? I'm sorry.
I don't have
what
my
would be the
calendar out,
February?
so are we looking at a
Yeah.
meeting before there?
What's the February?
11th or 12th?
Their
What's ours?
planning commission's going to be the third Tuesday of February, so,
But the 15th is when they expire.
but they wouldn't have another meeting until the third Tuesday in February, which I'm not sure what that is.
The 18th.
So when is ours? Just I want to get the bearings here. So
Ours is the 12th
Our- yeah.
Yep.
of February.
Okay, before the 15th. I mean, maybe if we're waiting that long, we should just wait until the 12th of February. I mean, if those 3 are, those are the 3.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking, is I'd like to see a pool of candidates.
I mean,
But
we
if
do,
if you put them on, on the 12th, and they have a meeting on the 18th, you know, they're gonna find out the 13th that they got on it, 5 days later, they have a meeting. How are they gonna have time to prepare?
yeah.
Because you have a lot to prepare for,
Yeah.
so.
Well, we have
I
a
think we
meeting on the
should make the
22nd. I would even go to the 22nd. That gives us at least 2
I think
more
the
weeks to
latest
get
we
some
should go
applicants.
is, like you just said,
Yeah.
the 22nd. We should make these decisions then.
But this time, I'd like to fill that vacant seat. I think we need to do that.
I'll make a motion to have James Thering fill the vacant seat on the planning commission that would expire on 2/15/21.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Support.
We have a motion and a support. Discussion?
I just wanted to say, I would like to see him on a longer seat instead of just a one-year term. That's why I'd rather.
Well,
wait on it, but-
I think we've got a meeting this month, though, that they have to
Yeah,
prepare
yeah.
for.
Yeah.
And we
That
need
was
to
the
fill
whole
that
purpose
seat.
of
If
doing
he-
that tonight.
You know, James, if he does a wonderful job, then it's a one-year thing. I mean, we're always looking for good people, so he'll get renominated more than likely,
Yeah.
so. Any further discussion on this one at all?
To get support? Second.
We already had a motion and a second.
I didn't know if anybody did it, so it's
Yeah.
not.
Yep.
oh,
Yep,
Okay.
yep.
So this is
Cody
now
did.
for the 1-year
Yeah.
term?
This is the one-year
Okay.
term, yep.
Okay. The
Expires
vacancy
a year
from
from-
Brian?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, yep,
Okay.
yep. Yep, so this is gonna be an expiration date of 2/15/2021. All in favor of affirming the nomination of James Thering for the vacant seat on the planning commission expiring 2/15/2021, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, Mr. Thering is on the planning commission.
Well, at least we don't have to tell him that he has to wait.
Yeah, exactly. So this would be the CRC, and this would be the vacancy left by Brian Smith. This would be a expiration date of, let's see, where's that board at? This would be,
12/31/22.
is that a 3-year term? Yeah, so it'd be 12/31 of 2022. Or 2023, yep. So we had one applicant on there, it'd be Robert Somerville. I would like to make the motion to, or recommend the nomination of Robert Somerville for the opening in the CRC board.
Second
I
that.
support.
You know, I've known Bob for probably 35 years. He's very involved with youth basketball. He's got a program he started at Western Immediate. I think he has actually more kids in his program than they do at Maury Courts. So, but I know he was incredibly excited about the opportunity to be on that board.
Yeah, it's a good fit. Good fit.
All right. So do we have a second on that one?
We did.
Yes, we did.
Second and a third.
Do we have any more discussion that people would, yeah. Do we have any further discussion on?
No, I think.
On
Just for
Robert?
clarification, that will end 12/31,
2020
2022.
2022. It's hard to say 2022. All right. So this would be affirming the nomination of Robert Somerville to the CRC Board with an expiration date of 12/31/2022. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, I think he's going to do a fabulous job. All right, board member reports. Let's start with Mr. Worley.
Okay. So I don't have anything new to report, but I want to just again, not to be redundant, but to remind the board that. Thank you very much.
Just a reminder for everybody leaving is we have openings on our planning commission, so we'd love to have applicants.
And I've got 7 cows and grade some time.
I'm sorry, Norm.
That's okay. So I just want to make a reminder again that the next 2% distribution with the tribe is going to be March 31st, and I've mentioned this a few times now. The distribution will probably be in April, late April, early May. We have 3 projects on our agenda, and as you know, it is for the interlocal pathway conductor, Area A between Deerfield and Denison. We also discussed the Broadway and Isabella intersection to see both about the turn signal and the lane. And we talked about the speed zones and safety lights for McGuire and Renaissance. It's going to be a while, especially in the latter two, for us to get the engineering, to get the costs, to see who's on board, et cetera. So I would like to make sure that we're moving ahead on this whole thing, because that's part of why we sometimes are delayed in getting things on the books for them, because we haven't had time. One other thing is that if we find that any one of these 3 should not be feasible for the next distribution, we still have a list of other projects that would probably need approval too, that I would like to have be considered. So, one step at a time, but these are the 3 that, we decided, we voted on, and these are the ones that had the highest priority for the tribe when I spoke with them. So, what were you going to say?
Okay, Norm, along that lines, I talked to Pat Gaffney on Monday, and he's going to get some information to Kim about Isabella and Broadway. He has some preliminary numbers together for that. As far as Mary McGuire School goes, we should be able to do something with Mary McGuire. But as far as Renaissance Charter Academy goes, he said that we can't do anything with that. He said that falls in, and it's weird, he said that falls in line with like the universities. He said that it's, yeah, and he said that they're going to have to do that on their own. He said they're going to have to request that to, I don't know if it's the road commission or to the state police, but they can't go out there and put warning signs up or anything. He said it's weird, but he said that he can only do things for a public school and a parochial school.
I know that when I spoke with Lisa, the principal of the Renaissance, she's really enthusiastic about having that, especially, she says, with arrivals and departures, that's really a safety issue of consideration.
It's terrible over there.
It's horrible. So, and also they very supportive of also wanting to get that intersection for Broadway and Isabella, because there's where you get the backup. So perhaps maybe through Renaissance, perhaps they can get on board with something. Maybe they can also go through the tribe on this as well, on 2%. So maybe we can work as a team on this. I understand if there's some restrictions on that, that makes sense, but at least if we can get McGuire down pat.
Yeah. They're doing an addition there, and we're going to be working on that job. Actually, I'm going to go there tomorrow.
Oh, okay.
And
If you
I'll
want to
talk
mention something to
her, and I'll
Lisa.
tell her to call Pat Gaffney.
Okay.
And who is the principal there? I'm not dealing with her.
It's Lisa and I'm blocking her.
Okay, Lisa, I've got an
Yeah,
email from
yeah.
her today.
Yeah.
So I've got, okay.
Yeah. So if we could do that, because I just want to make sure we get these projects up and running, and we have enough
Yeah,
time now.
and that's
so-
what I told
yeah.
him.
Okay.
That, you know, I
Thank
told
you.
him that, you know, we need to find something out maybe for the next distribution of 2%.
Perfect, thank you.
So he said that he would get together with Kim. He said that he's got some preliminary numbers and that he'll go from there.
Right.
But he's
And
gonna
it-
get the stuff together, and he figured it'd take him maybe the rest of the week to do that. But he said he'd get something to her.
Great. And it makes sense because we're doing all the other intersections.
Yeah.
You know, all the way
Right.
down. So
Mhm.
why not get the whole thing done in one step? And
Yeah.
And
then
that
we have
gets
that whole
conjunction with
road-
MDOT too, which is good.
Exactly,
Yeah.
right. And then you have that whole section there really much safer
Yeah.
in terms of traffic flow and, you know, that type of thing than what it's been. So that'd be great. Well, thanks.
It's Lisa Bergman.
Bird,
Um,
right,
yeah, I
right.
know, I
Yeah,
get
it's
it.
blocking.
So if I just want to clarify this, because you guys are going back and forth, and I think you're on it, but I don't know if everybody else is fully. So what Pat told us is that we can't request it,
No,
but they can.
they're gonna have to go to, I'm just gonna tell her to call Pat.
Yeah.
Yes.
So they have to get
And
approval
Pat can tell
from.
her who to call.
Gotcha.
If it's MDOT, if it's the state police, whoever.
Right.
But they have to make the request, we can't, and it's weird. He
And then
gave-
perhaps they can do that with a 2% request at the same time we're doing for Mary McGuire. Maybe
Right.
we could coordinate the timing of this.
Right.
Would be the way to
And
do
he
it.
as long as
said,
they
as
get your
far as
approval.
Mary McGuire
Right.
goes, he said it'd be no problem putting warning lights up there and stuff.
Perfect, perfect.
And but they can't, you know, as far as changing speeds, he said that they can't do that either, you know, that all has, we all know that has to go through the state police.
Right, right.
But,
And I've heard that you don't, I've heard this multiple times, I got verified at a meeting that Norm and I were at, is sometimes when you request for a speed study with the idea that they're gonna actually slow it down,
They increase
they
it.
actually speed it up.
Yeah.
So.
They threw out 60% actually
Yeah.
goes faster rather than slower, so
Yeah.
it's, watch what you ask for.
Yeah. It's for all those people out there, I'm the guy that's driving 35 miles an hour on Mission Street, that you're griping at.
So
All
thanks,
right.
Bill, I appreciate that.
All right, all set, Norm?
I'm set.
Okay, Lisa?
I haven't had any meetings.
Okay, all right. Kim?
Okay, couple of things. We had a Sidewalks and Pathways meeting, and we had Mark come in and update everybody on what's going on and that kind of thing. There was a lot of discussion about Lincoln Road here and sidewalks, and that they're trying to connect sidewalks and that down Lincoln, making things safer there, making it a priority. There were other areas as well that were discussed, and there is going to be an email getting put together to bring to the board. So,
Do we have the
list of
updated
priorities and stuff.
map yet?
There were some, we have an updated map, however, there were some corrections that had to be made. So those are there, and hopefully for the next meeting, we're gonna have an updated map to get to everybody, so.
And
We noticed some corrections that needed made, so.
and our new economic development, is it coordinator? Is that the official position, or?
Director.
Director, I'm sorry. Yeah. So, I think I looked at one of your business posts, and you had a whole thing on there about the Dirt 2 track, and how that's such a challenge for zoning and planning coordinators. So, have you driven around and looked at the Dirt 2 tracks yet?
I have been doing some driving around, yes.
Okay, good. William?
Oh,
Oh, I'm
one
sorry.
more, sorry. And then also, reminder, winter taxes are gonna be coming due, so.
Okay.
I don't have anything, there's a road commission meeting tomorrow that I'll attend. I do have a question for Kim.
Yes.
Jeremy called me the other day, Jeremy McDonald. He wants to know who makes appointments to the sidewalk committee. And I said, we initially did, but Denise Webster is gonna be moving, and she's
Yes.
gonna be done on that board. Who replaced?
She is
does-
planning commission.
Yeah, does the planning
The planning
commission
I
appoint
believe,
that person, or
appoints
did
that
we?
person,
We did.
right? The planning commission
Okay.
is the one
That's
who
what I
appoints
told
that.
him. I
Was she
told him.
Yeah,
representative of the planning commission?
Yeah, she's the
Okay.
planning, yeah.
Okay.
And
That's
they're
what
the
I
one
told
that-
him. I told him
Mhm.
that the planning commission should be doing it, not us.
Yeah, and
If
we
you'd like some
discussed that.
clarity on it,
Yeah.
Denise is the representative of the planning
Yeah.
commission.
right,
Mhm.
right.
In addition to that, the planning commission makes all the appointments to the sidewalk and pathway committee.
Okay.
And Bill, just for, if you could, maybe you could find out tomorrow too, what their anticipated dates are, just to, in our next meeting, be able to inform people on Lincoln and
Oh,
Isabella.
Isabella, now that you're saying that, when I talked to Pat the other day, there's still easement problems out on Isabella, the one that he's been dealing with. I think you know that one, Mark. And he said that it's getting to the point where we're gonna have to get or the road commission's gonna have to get an attorney involved. They're holding the project up. So he's not happy.
Okay. Do we know anything on Lincoln?
No, he
Okay.
never mentioned anything.
I know they had some easement issues there too, I believe. Okay.
He never mentioned those easement issues on Lincoln.
Okay.
He said specifically Isabella. So
Hmm.
maybe the ones on Lincoln have been resolved, maybe Mark knows, I don't know.
Yeah, because I mean, that was one where they originally were talking, I think, kind of like the bridge, as they were talking about a February start on that thing, so we'd be getting really close. Be nice to know you drive it, I drive it, everybody, lots of people drive it. It'd be nice to have an idea of what's going on
There's some
there.
work done there, the washout wasn't there?
Mhm.
Saw that.
That's often current.
Yeah, yeah. Mr. Milky,
I'm good.
I know Mr. Lannon's got a few.
Sure. I'll start out with a comment.
Handout.
There's a map around here,
Thank you.
everybody. This is something we've talked about in the past, and Trustee Bill made mention here recently, and it sparked that to surface in the agenda. Anyways, this is a map of our township, and I've added a red dot and a yellow circle on it, and that indicates the township's voting precincts. And if you notice, our township is square, 6 by 6 miles. But the 3 precincts that we have, and this building may even have a second precinct in it, so we may actually have 4 precincts.
Yes,
Be a little
there,
more accurate.
there are.
So we have 4 voting precincts in our township. And if you were to intercept through the middle of the township, there are no voting precincts in our southern half of the township. In fact, the 4 precincts we have are closer to being in the upper third, and the best part of 2/3 of our township don't have a voting precinct. So I would urge the board and request of the manager, or if it's the clerk's duties, which it may fall into that person's possession, to, for a service to our citizens and community, get voting precincts spread out across our township. So it would be more convenient for all of our citizens to have an opportunity to vote. You know, you come across inclement weather at times during voting days. You come across people that don't really have the transportation means or the physical capabilities to get to precincts that are so remote from the world they live in the township. So I think I would ask the board to entertain a motion of some sort that we put some efforts in this area, and if at all possible, to have it in place soon for voting this year in the general election.
I just wanted to make it clear, I never said I want one down at that south, or that end of town. I don't know what you meant when you said, I said something about
You
The email.
mentioned
an email today.
an email yesterday.
Well,
about,
yeah, I mean, we were
precincts.
talking about the median incomes. I was responding to what you had sent, telling that Union Township is what we were ranked 28th lowest for
Regardless, I
median
was just
income.
saying your comment sparked
Oh,
what
oh,
has been
okay.
in me.
Oh, well,
and
I
it
just,
brought that to the,
well,
to
my
the
comment,
surface
right,
again.
and my comment back was, you know, I hear,
We're not debating this right now.
right, I know,
Just
okay,
facts.
whatever.
I have the floor right now as
Right,
board
I'm sorry.
comments. And I also attended the Isabella County Board of Commission meeting that took place last night. And it was a relatively quick meeting. What took place was Commissioner Green was elected for this coming year as the board chair. Commissioner Horton was elected as the vice chair. Finance and Administration, I think I have these pretty accurate, will be headed up by Jim Horton and Tobin Hope. Criminal Justice and County Affairs by Commissioner Jalazinski and Commissioner Engler. Human Resources and Public Works, Jim Marino and Steve Swaney. Intergovernmental Affairs, I believe is Tobin, Hope, and Jim Marino again. And they concluded the meeting. Thank you.
Thanks, Tim.
Really quick, just a clarification for the two here. One of which is the two voting precincts here. One of which is an absentee ballot precinct. So there may be two here, but one is for absentee ballots only. So
Okay. But we do officially have 4 precincts.
Yes.
yeah.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Closing board member reports. We move on to consent agenda, and I believe Mr. Mulkey has something you wanted to do on that.
Yeah, the minutes, there were a couple clarifications, and I had already given these to Jennifer, and I believe Tim gave a change as well, and I just thought it's important for you all to know what those requested changes were. So in section A2, which is appointments to the Zoning Board of Appeals, the first motion was actually, and I actually went back to the video today because I thought, this seems wrong, was by, motion by Cody, moved by Milky for Andy Tyson, and then the second motion underneath is Cody, moved by Worley, and then if I may, Tim, we actually had abstain one of our members from the vote of the second motion, so instead of ayes 6, it should be ayes 5. Abstain 1.
Where are you talking, Brian?
This is
And
report
two.
board comments,
Okay.
section A.
Page 13.
Yep, page 13, my apologies. The 4 motions to the zoning board of appeals are at the bottom of the page.
Uh-huh.
And it's the first 2. Your name and my name should be reversed.
Oh, I gotcha. So the first one was you seconding, and the
Right.
other one was me, okay.
And then the second one, the votes was actually 5-0 with
Yes.
abstention.
Gotcha.
I just felt the board should
Yeah.
hear those comments that were given to Jennifer. So
Yep.
unless somebody has different memory, I did look at the tape.
No, I think you're
Thank you.
you're dead on.
I did also want to bring something forward in regards to that, if I may. I think we, as a board, had a procedural blunder under the appointments to the Construction Board of Appeals.
Construction.
Unless we have an ordinance or resolution that tells us different. But if you go to the little red book as we define it, and this isn't the most current version, although one is coming out this year, and there's opportunity to go to some sessions to learn a little more about what those changes are. But in review of this, it indicates that the supervisor appoints the members to this board, to the Construction Board of Appeals. And there's no mention about this board approving the supervisor's appointments. And what took place was I nominated 2 people. One of the other trustees nominated another person, and then we went through and made motions. But if you go to 179 under this, I'll just read a paragraph. Where the Township Board has elected to enforce the state construction code, the Township must create a Construction Board of Appeals consisting of not less than 3, which we have, nor more than 7 members. Unless otherwise determined by ordinance, the members are appointed for a 2-year term by the Township Supervisor. The members must be qualified by experience or training in the building trades. And then there's a Michigan compiled law. Where, for instance, the Planning Commission specifies the supervisor appoints and the board approves. There's no mention of the board approving, and we went procedurally totally different than what's indicated here. So I would have to suggest that the action we took is null and void. I don't know if anybody came in and got sworn in under those circumstances, or if we could procedurally make it less cumbersome and move forward and do it how it's indicated to be done.
I'd suggest you let the administration look into that, because that, just to confirm that you're looking at the little red book, and I get it, but I'd prefer to look at the statute.
Yep, appreciate it.
One moment of unabated power, too.
Felt good for a while.
Exactly. I was ready to shoot some missiles off here.
And I guess the only other thing that I'd mention, our Planning Commission and ZBA update did take place and presented by Peter Gellenate, and there was real no mention of that in the minutes.
All right.
And that's all I had.
Okay. So we have some changes to the consent agenda that were presented. So we do need to have, I believe, the motion and the second on this.
I'll make a motion, we approve the consent agenda with the changes in the minutes.
Support, procedural question?
Yes, sir.
Since we took the minutes out, do we need to make a motion separately on those? Because technically they're removed from the consent agenda.
Oh, that's right, you pulled them, didn't you?
Yeah, so we
we'll
probably
have to.
should need 2 here.
Yep.
But I'll second the motion to approve the consent agenda.
Yep. And I'll change mine to leave out the minutes.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second on the consent agenda. All in favor of approval, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Were warrants good?
Consent agenda approved. Now we have the minutes to deal with.
Well, I will motion to approve the minutes as presented with the changes that both I pointed out, and I guess just the 3 that I pointed out, right?
I support.
Yep. Okay, motion and support, discussion. All right, seeing none. Approval of the minutes for December 18th, 2019's regular meeting. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes approved. And we move ourselves on to item 10, new business. The first item is going to be item A, as discussed earlier. This is the Board of Trustees' consideration of a resolution placing a moratorium on the issuance of approvals or permits for sand and gravel pit operations, therefore allowing staff additional time to complete the work required for study and recommendations related to extraction operation regulations. Mark, would you like to
Thank you.
add on to that?
And good evening, everybody. The paperwork, this is an add-on to the agenda. The paperwork was emailed to you yesterday and at your seats this evening. The operation of sand, gravel pits, mining, other extraction operations, I think has at least the potential to impact the health and safety and environment of the people in the area, the property, general township, just generally the township. And looking at our existing regulations, both the general ordinance and the zoning code, I think those are a bit dated. I think they're lacking probably in some areas, one being some enforcement options for this type of operation, at least compared to some more modern, more current regulations for these type of operations. And so based on those, those potential impacts, the administration's recommending placing a moratorium on approving permits and processing applications for this, for all these types of operations, the existing applications that may come in the future, at least during this moratorium period. This is not about trying to prohibit these operations. We're not allowed to do that. We are allowed to regulate them. The moratorium that we're recommending would be for 125 days. If approved, it would go into effect essentially immediately, run through, be 125 days. It'd run through May 13th. The resolution as presented to you allows for a couple other things in addition to the moratorium. If we're not satisfied at the end of the 125 days, it allows for coming back to the board and seeking a 60-day extension. It also allows for, it includes an appeal process by a party that might be aggrieved by the moratorium. They'd have the opportunity to come to this board, make their case, and ask to be exempted, if you will, from the moratorium. During the duration of the moratorium, the staff would be looking at our existing codes and deciding whether or not recommendations should be brought forward, whether it's a general ordinance, a zoning code, ordinance change, some combination of both, and bring those through the regular processes that govern how you amend zoning ordinances and general ordinances. So during this same 125-day period, we'd be looking to see if we needed to update any of this stuff, and we'd be actively going through that process during this period as well. So the goal would be, if there are new regulations, they'd be in place at the end of this period. As it relates to the zoning code, I think that administratively we'd be working with the Planning Commission. I think they deal with that first, bring it up to the Board of Trustees for final approval. If there's any changes recommended on the general ordinances, that would come to this body initially. Both require, I think, at least one, probably at least two meetings, public hearings in both cases. So there'll be opportunity to hear from the public if any of these existing regs are being recommended to be changed. And so that's our recommendation. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have regarding it.
I would make a motion that we approve the resolution placing a moratorium on the issuance of approvals or permits for sand and gravel pit operations, thereby allowing staff additional time to complete the work required for study and recommendations related to extraction operation regulations.
Support.
And I will add that the moratorium is articulated in a resolution.
Should I use that as my motion instead? Or is that?
I would move approval of the resolution and just read the title of it.
Okay. So I would make a motion that we approve the moratorium for the, I guess for the,
Sand and gravel.
how do you want me to say that again?
Moratorium on the issuance of
Okay.
approvals or permits for sand and gravel pits.
Okay. So I make a motion that we approve the moratorium on the issuance of approvals or permits for sand and gravel pits, according to a resolution.
Still support.
Okay, discussion.
Well, I think what we heard tonight from several people, if I could put it into summation, there were issues regarding health, safety, community well-being, quality of life, and economics. And I think all those are very valid issues that need to be considered on something of this magnitude. I think that the moratorium is a prudent way to intercede at this point. I think there's a lot of controversy regarding this issue, and rightfully so. We want to be respectful of both sides and make sure that everyone has a fair opportunity of hearing on this. And I think it just gives us a chance for everyone to take a step back, take a breath, and move on from there. And I kind of equate it to, in psychotherapy, as a psychologist, when you're doing a treatment plan, you always look for you start with the least invasive procedure, the least invasive intervention. And I think this moratorium is exactly that. I think it's the least invasive intervention. It's a prudent way to go at this point. I think it protects the township. It protects the residents, and it also protects the contractor developer as well. So I think everyone is being, protected here. We have an opportunity to go back and review our zoning ordinances. I think it was 1981 when the mining parts of our ordinance were last updated, so it really needs to be done. And what I also liked in it, that there's a grievance process in there, that if the applicant has a grievance regarding this, they can come forward with that too. So I think it covers all areas. I think it's a well-written document, so I support it wholeheartedly.
I have some reservations on this whole thing. I was at the Planning Commission meeting, and I've heard all the arguments, and I agree with probably 99.9% of them. But I also look at it from the other side, and this was presented originally, I believe, over a year ago. And so why didn't we take that opportunity when we knew it was coming back to take a look at this ordinance? And then the applicant, we forget about what Mr. Zalet said, is how much money he has invested based upon the playing field and the rules that were in place. And to go back and change the rules is, number one, is that from his standpoint, it takes the operation of this facility out for 2020, okay? But on top of that is the additional thousands of dollars it's going to take to do the engineering on this project. And then when we look at this, is that going to make a difference in the end game as far as whether or not this is approved? I don't know. I mean, will it change my mind? Probably not. We all have opinions on this. But I just do feel that that at this point in the game, I don't know as if this is being fair to Mr. Zalad.
I have a question for Peter. Can I ask Peter a question? Peter, they don't own this property, right? Zalad's own the property already? Okay, I was under the assumption that they were gonna buy it if this passed. I didn't know that they currently owned it. In that planning commission meeting, I thought that.
It wasn't real clear.
Right.
Yeah.
I went to that meeting too, and I was kind of confused. I thought, because I asked Doug LaBelle afterwards. I said, Doug, do they own the property? Or are they seeking all of this? And then if the special use permit passes, then do they have a purchase agreement?
It seemed that it was tied, it looked like it was tied to the purchase agreement.
That's what I
In order
just
for that to
didn't
go through,
understand
for them to
that.
get
I
approved
mean,
on the gravel.
but they do own the
first.
property then?
Yeah.
Okay, because I thought somebody said it was for
The
sale.
application indicates that the applicant is also the owner. I don't know what all the machinations are. Mr. Zalad mentioned somebody connected to him via family owns the property. I don't know how that relates to how the business is technically put together.
Yeah.
But we're not aware of any conditional purchase agreement, and the application doesn't suggest that there is. That's about all we can say on ownership.
You good?
Yeah, go ahead.
I guess I'm viewing this a little different in the sense that being with the township in one capacity or another for a decade, essentially, we've had events that have come up, whether they're internal to the township or external, meaning changes in state law, et cetera, that make us look at our ordinances and go, oh, we got to fix this. And this, if we were to pass this, I can think of at least 3 other cases, so this would be the 4th moratorium that we would consider placing, that I can remember off the top of my head, with the purpose of protecting the township. And I do agree with, to a certain degree, that the comments were made that by the applicant that, I feel singled out. I don't view that as the intent, right? And I was really thankful to read in this that there's an opportunity for anybody directly affected to bring that before the board. And that gave me some not wiggle room, but it made me feel better about it, right? Because I had the similar thoughts that you did, Ben. But I view this as bigger than one applicant, right? We have an issue where this could come up again, and we need to correct our ordinance so that we're prepared for when it does happen. And so I don't think a moratorium is unusual to request in this case.
Sir.
Yeah. I think this motion made is somewhat limiting in the sense that I think maybe it should be broader by including mining operations. I mean, we're talking sand and gravel here, but, that seems to pigeonhole it a little bit. And I would like to see mining included in the resolution. And I do believe that we are deeply in the midst of reviewing township ordinances. And so it's very appropriate to take a pause and continue on that process and not make a hurried decision that will impact a significant geographical area as well as the people who reside in that area. So I think it's prudent to take a pause and look. I'd also mention that in reflection of the 10 criteria that we go through when there is a special use or a look at that, I can think of a couple that absolutely in my mind that this won't pass.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So, and I, we need aggregate our lives require us to have aggregate. I fully understand the commerce and business portion of this. But at this point in time, I could support a slightly modified motion.
So I read it to include mining at this point, because this is whereas the operation of sand and gravel pits and other extraction operations. And so to me, I felt it included that.
I was just listening to Norm's motion, which,
Was this resolution? Yeah,
Yeah.
you're right. The
Yeah.
title does say
I read-
that, but in the body, it actually talks about extraction operations. And so I felt it was covering that, because I think that's a good point.
if it's in the resolution, yeah. I like that. Okay, I'll strike that and can support the motion.
Also include depositing,
That I don't remember
Say that.
seeing.
I don't remember
because
seeing
that was part of their operation, was actually depositing materials from other sites on that body of land. So I would assume that if we were going to have this, we should also be looking at depositing along with extraction.
Yeah, Ben, that, listening to the planning commission, via the airwaves, when it would be coming before us, that was the other half of the equation that is so important in my mind. Because it was said, this is not a sand and gravel operation that the public's coming in to purchase product. It's gonna be operated by the owners, which there's some monitoring that needs, and truly what is going back in, how is that being monitored? And compaction and a whole host of things that come in my
I
mind.
can think of,
according to
some places close by where that was it's never been monitored. We've never had anything that monitors what's deposited. So I think that if we're looking at this, we should be looking at extraction and depositing. And so therefore, it's hard to do a resolution, I guess, or how do we handle that? I mean, do we add
Just add depositing.
add depositing into the,
Well,
What do you think, Mark?
I mean, you're extracting material, sand, which is what they're using in aggregate for construction purposes, but then you're bringing back fill. So the fill's gonna be, mainly like unusable material like clay and things like that. We don't have really any geology of that area from the standpoint of what the underground drainage is.
the new regulations will speak
How does that change?
to that side. What we're doing here is prohibiting any more action on this or similar applications. So you're not gonna end up with a hole in the ground while this moratorium's going on, that you need to be concerned with fill.
So
and
would we like to direct
remediation.
then, Mark, that we look into that as an addition into the?
That'll be part and parcel. I mean, even the current code has some language about fill. And the regulations so that's part of what we're reviewing. They're in the existing. And I'm sure they'll be part of the new. I haven't looked, and none of us have looked at the existing regulations so close that I just don't want to stand up here and definitively say they're all going to get thrown out and replaced.
Yeah.
It's my guess, but we got to look at it first before I can say that.
Well, we have our two key minds here that both heard us say that that's something maybe that we need to look at, so, right?
We wouldn't be looking at extraction ordinances without addressing the hole in the ground and what goes back in.
And it seems to me deposits are not going to be an issue with the exception of existing operations.
And
I mean,
depending on what we
if
do.
we don't have new
move
ones,
forward,
right.
We might be able to better address the
Right.
existing.
So I think it's a valid concern. I'm not sure. I mean, it's the second step of mining
Yeah,
It's what we're
operation.
going to be doing during the 125 days.
Okay, well, it's been out in the open and it's been heard, so that's the only thing we can do, right?
Right.
All right. Further discussion on the resolution? Okay, do we want to make this a, with it being resolution, it needs to be a roll call, correct?
Ready?
All right, let's start with Treasurer Rice.
Is Clerk Cody gonna
Right.
I
do
can
roll call?
abstain to the end.
Treasurer Rice.
Yes.
Trustee Hauk.
Yes.
Trustee Milky.
Yes.
Trustee Lannan.
Yes.
Trustee Worley.
Yes.
Clerk Cody, yes. Supervisor Gunning.
Yes, but again, I have reservations based upon the timing and feeling for the applicant, but I'm going to be voting yes on this. All right. Item B. This is a Board of Trustees consideration for approval of a resolution to allow a resident to appeal to the Board of Review by letter without a personal appearance by the taxpayer or his or her agent.
This is an annual action item that you have done historically, and it helps, it's a convenience, it allows people to appeal to the Board of Review without appearing in person. I think it's, if you have any questions on them, I'm happy to answer them. All the rules and regulations apply to the, I'll call them letter appeals, the same as they would an in-person appeal.
I'd make a motion to approve a resolution to allow residents to appeal to the Board of Review by letter without a personal appearance by the taxpayers or his or her agent.
Support.
Motion, support, discussion.
I just mentioned, this is a avenue available to non-residents who may have property in our area. It seems only prudent and appropriate to make life as convenient as possible for our residents, if it's that convenient for non-residents.
Worked well in the past. Might as well keep it going.
And there's lots of reasons, I think, as to why a person can't come in, elderly, sick, other commitments out of town. I mean, it all makes sense. And it has in here that they still have to provide the documentation, give reasons as to why they're asking for a change, in terms of the evaluations and stuff. So I think it's good. Makes it more user-friendly.
It's a no-brainer
Yeah.
from my perspective.
Yep, and I can tell you right now that watching the Board of Review is that those letters are addressed in the same manner and with the same respect as the people that show up.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, I agree.
So I want to let people know that there's careful consideration always. All right, so any further discussion at this? Okay, so this will be a roll call vote. And this will be to approve of a resolution to allow a resident to appeal to the Board of Review by letter without a personal appearance by the taxpayer or his or her agent.
Treasurer Rice.
Yes.
Trustee Hauk.
Yes.
Trustee Milky.
Yes.
Trustee Lannan.
Yes.
Trustee Worley.
Yes.
Supervisor Gunning.
Yes.
Clerk Cody, yes.
Okay, last item on new business. This is to consider the approval of the attached resolution opting out of the employer healthcare benefit plan contribution limits as allowed under the State of Michigan Public Act 152, Publicly Funded Health Insurance Contribution Act for the benefit year of 2020.
And so again, this is an annual activity. You approved a similar resolution last year. I will state at the outset that per statute, for this to be adopted, it takes a 2/3 vote. The paperwork is on page 31 of your agenda packet. And under the Public Act that was approved, I want to say back in 2011. The state of Michigan requires governmental entities to do one of three things as it relates to employee benefit health care. And this is all in an attempt to help control the cost, or in some cases shift the costs. But under the Act, there are three alternatives available to entities such as ours. The employer's cost share of the health care benefit can be split with the employees at a rate of 80%, 20%, 80% to the employer, 20% to the employee, or the employer must set limits. They're referred to as the hard cap limits, and the employer's contribution cannot exceed certain amounts that are published by the state every year. And if the entity doesn't want to do either of those, they can choose to opt out of the cost share requirement. And in our particular case, we have been moving towards an 80-20 split. Plan year 2017, there was no cost sharing, it was 100% borne by the employer. And then we started moving towards cost share. The most recent plan year 2019, the costs were shared 94%, 6%, with the approval of the collective bargaining agreements that you all approved a couple meetings ago. Over the next 3 years, it's currently 92%, 8% for plan year 20, moving up to 90-10 in plan year 22 per the collective bargaining agreements. So we're moving towards the 80-20 split, so that's been our choice strategically to deal with the increasing health care costs. And so in order to effectuate that, and I think it's required by law, if we don't adopt this resolution, then we're in conflict with our collective bargaining agreement. I don't know what we do there then, other than call an attorney, but but in the meantime, by approving this resolution, we're conforming with the statute, the Public Act, and so we're in good standing there. And just as an aside, in 2020, the 8% that is borne by the employees, I approximate that to be $37,000 that otherwise we'd be paying. Be happy to answer any questions.
Seems pretty straightforward to me.
Pretty thorough.
Yeah.
We did approve those contracts.
Yes.
It just allows it to happen legally, too.
All right, so we need a motion.
I'd like to move that we approve resolution to adopt the annual exemption option as set forth in 2011 Public Act 152, the Publicly Funded Health Insurance Contribution Act for the period from January 1st, 2020 to December 31st, 2020, as presented before us.
Support.
Okay, further discussion? This is going to be a roll call vote.
Yep.
It's a resolution. It's like the third one. I got it down.
All right. Supervisor Gunning.
Yes.
Treasurer Rice.
Yes.
Trustee Hauk.
Yes.
Trustee Melton.
Yes.
Trustee Lannan.
Yes.
Trustee Worley.
Yes.
Clerk Cody, yes.
All right, that's the end of new business, and we move on to extended public comment. This is going to be restricted to 5 minutes regarding any issue. And seeing as though there is absolutely not one single human being left in the room besides us and employees, I think we can probably say that there's nobody that wants to do public comments. We'll close it. Item 12, manager comments. Mark.
Thank you. Just a couple. The Recreation Authority Committee continues to meet. This is the committee that the school district, the city, and the township have put together to look at the feasibility of creating a recreation authority for the aquatic center. We meet monthly. We have our January meeting tomorrow. I am out of the office next week. Sherry Teal will be the acting township manager. I'll also be out of town. I won't be out of the state, but I will be out of town. And then I could not, and this gets back to a discussion that was earlier in the meeting. I just want to confirm, because I do not believe, and I may be wrong, but I don't believe a vote was ever taken as it relates to the top 3 projects that you've mentioned for the 2%.
Yeah,
And so I wanted to clarify that.
yes, yeah, I'm sorry.
And absent that, and because there was some discussion along the way, and then it kind of died, and that's why you brought it back up again. I just want to confirm that those are the 3 projects that you want the administration as the priority ones to be
Correct.
working on. It feels like after tonight, that's an accurate statement.
Yes.
I just want to make sure I didn't misread something.
I agree to
I
it.
agree.
Yeah,
Yeah, we had mentioned Meridian Road too.
right, and again, you know, it's,
Yeah.
you know, our list was good, we had a good list, and
But we
there's
have to
a,
get a hold of Deerfield Township to see if they're
Right,
willing
yes.
to.
I think that's why we said maybe in a subsequent
yeah, the
project.
next one round. yeah,
Cycle, right.
The next
I got
cycle.
It's on the
Property
list of
taxes
7 or
or
8
so.
that was part of
Yeah, it's really a need.
Trustee Worley's original memo, but as I understand it, the priorities that you want us to look at are the Isabella intersection, the signaling at both schools, to the extent we can do something there, the interlocal connector pathway, and
That's it.
Was there anything in Jameson Park in there too?
and that would be, those are the top 3.
Correct, yes.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
All right. Final board member comment. Let's start with Treasurer Rice.
I said mine mostly earlier, but just a reminder, taxes are coming due, and you can pay them online, for those that, want to be able to do that. There's a link on our website, so you can get there and pay it online if you
What
want.
is the exact date on that? February what?
14th.
14th. That's Valentine's Day.
Yep.
Mr. Nolte?
2 things. This came up, I think we've talked about it before, but this also came up from some of the residents that came and spoke tonight regarding notification range.
Yes.
And when I've sat on the planning commission in the 300-foot, I always thought, boy, just a little bit further and you'd really hit some people that still really care about this. And, I don't know if we can get consensus and maybe let's extend that, because just making it more available to more residents to be known what's going on is all but good.
Yeah.
I think we threw out last time 1,000 feet, going from 300 to 1,000.
Right.
Especially in a rural area like that. You know, you go 300 feet, like I said, 2 people were notified. And I drove out there, and the houses are pretty far apart. Even 1,000 feet, is only going to bring in
Right.
a small group of people in that area. But 1,000 feet somewhere in town or something like that, or in the
Well, I
town.
mean, they have to limit it to, so could you look at it from a rural situation like that, which is very rare, obviously. 'Cause we've had very few rural, situations like this. But I think, the meat and bones is I can think of like at least 3 things that have happened in the last, 3 years where the 300 feet hit very minimal amount of people, where if it would have been expanded slightly, it would have been, because you had more houses, but it just happened to be like in an area where there was maybe a larger expanse of land in between. So maybe we could also look at the fact if it's a rural designation, that maybe that would be a broader.
Sure, I'd be open to quite a bit, but I
Yeah.
think for us to do anything, we have to say that we want to put it on the agenda for discussion.
Well, I think I can
Cer-
help
cer-
you with this, because
Okay.
I've kind of asked this,
You have, okay.
looked
Awesome.
into it and asked some questions about it.
Yeah, I mean,
The,
what I haven't thought of, I'm sorry, Mark.
as it relates to the zoning code, the state statute indicates 300 feet. And I also inquired about, because it came up, you brought it up at the last meeting, about extending that. And the feedback that I've gotten so far is that there is a lot of case law that limits you to the 300 feet. That's what the state statute says. Now, it seems like, well, why not notify more people? What's the harm? Well, the developer is the one that has contested that and has prevailed in the case law. And that applies to the zoning code. You know, we're also looking at reviewing the general ordinances, because that might be a way to address extraction as opposed to the zoning code. And we're looking pluses and minuses of all that. And to the extent that in this particular case for extraction, because that's the only ordinance we're kind of dealing with, we might be able to extend notification beyond 300 feet, because now it's not part of the zoning code.
So-
If you follow me.
Yes.
But in terms of wanting to go into the zoning code and as a blanket notification, let's change it from 300 feet to 700 feet, I'm not sure that that would be successful. I have looked into it. I'm pretty comfortable being almost definitive on that. So I just bring that up because it might shorten the conversation that you're all having right now.
Appreciate that. So what you're referencing then is where those challenges have happened is related directly to the Zoning Enabling Act then?
Yeah.
Okay. That makes perfect sense then.
Right, the developer's going, wait a minute, you notified people 1,000 feet away and the code says 300.
You know,
You're
Brian,
crimping my style.
I'm glad you brought that up because I believe it was
Ms. Richards.
Ms. Richards.
Mhm.
She had brought up, and I've always thought this, and I brought it up multiple times, that our methodologies of informing people are dated with the newspaper that most people don't read. Unfortunately, I mean, that's the way of the newspaper, but it's all electronic media nowadays. But I don't know if you guys have been on the new county website. It's pretty nice. And it's very interactive and it's very user-friendly. And I keep going back to our web page, and it's to me, it smells of like 2004 or 5, whenever it was done. I don't think it's not a very user-friendly layout. I think it's cumbersome, outdated, and I think that when we look at notification, maybe it's right in front of our face, is what we need to do is have a web page that people will go to.
Yeah.
I mean,
She had mentioned electronic or just even snail mail, but have something different than the newspaper is one of her things in terms of notification.
Yeah.
So that's a good point.
yeah.
We did mail the notifications, and one
All
went
right.
to that address.
Just regular mail. Is that what that is?
Yeah, yes, no. And the other thing she also brought up in terms of notification is that they only had 2 weeks prior notice. So I don't know if that's the way it's typically done in terms of how much time do
That's
people
the
need.
state law, yeah.
That's state law too.
Yeah.
It doesn't give some folks, like they were saying, some folks didn't even know about it. So, so we're talking about the widening the catchment area along with the timing and along with the means of transmitting the information. So there's a lot of things there.
We're sensitive to that. I mean, I'm the one that called Mr. Zalad
Yes.
last night to alert him of this meeting, and Ms. Richardson. So we're sensitive. So as we're looking at whatever the issue is, whether it's zoning, land use, or something completely different, we're wanting to make sure we're doing what we can. I mean, we had information put on a billboard on Mission Road trying to make sure people knew what was going on. So I just want to let you know that any opportunity we have to try to improve that within law within current web pages, whatever we think is existing, but, you know, we're committed to doing what we can to make sure people know what's going on in the
I appreciate
township.
the efforts that you made, Mark, in bringing in both the applicant as well as some of the residents. And I thought that was a fair way and very transparent. So I thought that was very good, so thank you.
All right, I had one other item. Briefly, I just want to thank Trustee Lannon for bringing this to us, because I've had these concerns since when I served on the board with you back in 2012 to 2016. Precinct that is currently at Jameson for the voting polls, at least back in those days, was actually above the state limit for precinct in the count of registered voters. And with the changes that we've seen with Prop 2 and 3, easier to register, you know, same-day registration, those kinds of things, it seems to me, and I don't know if you've looked at this, but where we're at as far as the count for that precinct and what the current state regulations are, I haven't looked at it in a while. But I do know that, you know, it is our largest precinct as far as voter base. And our high-density areas are on the south end, and we have a diverse population down there, everything from agricultural to elderly housing to student housing. I mean, this is a vast number of our residents live in that southeast corner, and our precinct for them is hidden and virtually unfindable by many, especially when the old voter cards spelled the name wrong and people would Google the map. Back in 14, we had you would Google the address and it didn't exist because Bud Street was spelled wrong. But it is difficult for people to find. And I'm not suggesting that we get rid of Jameson Hall, but I'm very supportive of Trustee Lannon's idea of maybe breaking into an additional precinct that provides more opportunities for voters to vote.
Should we go to my comment now?
Yeah.
Okay, one of my comments, you know, thank you for bringing that up, but, okay, so we have been looking into this, you know, because there's rules, regulations, you can't just put it anywhere. You have to have guidelines. So we have been looking into this, and then once we find some good spots, we're gonna bring it to the election commission decides, and then they bring it back to the board. We are waiting on after this election to see how the AV is gonna change everything. Because right now, we have to have an AV. We already had one, but now everybody is required to have an absentee ballot board, like, you know, where we have the tabulator. So, you know what I mean? What an AV is, precinct. So we are looking into the south side. I mean, we're trying to find something, but it's a little easier said than done, kind of thing.
I would
You know.
piggyback on what everyone's saying, because I live on the south side, right on the border of the next township. And, you know, you're driving from there all the way up to Jameson Hall to vote. I mean, it's ridiculous. And, you know, and especially in bad weather. So, and there's a high population, as you say, just in our little area alone where we live. You know, the neighborhood, there's, you know, farmers all around. I mean, it's pretty tense. So, I would support seeing something go into the south.
You got a two-car garage, don't you?
Yeah, no, one car.
Oh, just one car?
No, two cars.
Okay.
It's definitely something we're looking into.
That would work, right?
No.
You got some electrical, you got some outlets in the garage too?
Coffee and donuts, because we're out
Yeah.
of donuts here now, so.
Little beer fridge? Okay.
We have to have a specific
Gold.
amount of parking spots and everything. I mean, you know.
So Lisa, would it be fairly easy to put out what that criteria is to the board? So we could keep our eyes open to try and help identify potential locations and understand a little better what the requirements and criteria are for precincts?
I can get it to you. It's a big list, but I'll get it to you.
Okay, yeah. If you
That'd be
want,
helpful.
maybe mind emailing that if that's a good way to go to the board.
Yeah, but it is the election commission that makes that decision.
Sure.
Not the board. I mean, I just read that yesterday, so.
We're just trying to help you out.
Okay.
But yeah, it has been one of the things we're looking into, so.
Nice.
All right.
I do have two more comments, though, after.
Well,
I don't know if you're done.
Well, we got to keep
I'm
going
done.
around here.
Yep, I'm done.
You got to go to
Okay.
Mr. Lannon
Thanks,
first.
Lisa.
I'll remember you're there. Okay.
Okay. Hate to cut in the middle here. But, so, one thing that stuck out a little bit from the conversation from our citizens that were in the audience, takes me to the thought of sidewalks and pathways in our township. We're a fairly populated township, and I see our sidewalks used quite heavily, and our roads being used where there aren't sidewalks, and the pathways through the fields. And so that just reinforces, in my mind, the importance and the desire citizens have to have sidewalks. So, listening to the folks in the audience, they live rural on the extreme south end of our township and beyond into the next rural township area, and they're talking about road races that are going on, running races, events, 5 and 10Ks, bicycle events that are going on, kids riding bicycles, them walking, horses. But they have that need in the rural area that, many people just say, there's no way you would need that. So in my mind, that just really reinforces the importance and needs to assure that sidewalks and pathways are put in as we can do in the township. Thanks again for the support on what I call the voting precinct fair location distribution. There may be criteria to have it, but I won't be surprised if some of that criteria is a fair distribution and access and all that. So maybe we're not meeting those parts of the criteria. And the other thing that struck me funny, I would think, and Bill or Mark or any of us, we heard what one of the employees of the road commission's interpretation was on Isabella Road and the ability to request improvements. And what I heard was that was because it's a charter school and maybe because that administration is through CMU or something. And I may be off, but all the roads through CMU are city streets. And so talking with the city folks, how they manage the roads and really what impact or requirements the university has over that, it's just a leap for me to just accept that a Renaissance charter school, a charter school could have that much impact over a county road that's, why would they want that sort of responsibility or need? So, I just would want to confirm really what the interpretation is, and I think we should put some efforts in that area so we can get it on our, but I also agree that, yes, a joint effort, if that is required, and even if it isn't.
Right, based on the information that we have on hand from Bill, I'd say, let's see what we can do to piggyback with them. But again, we have to find out definitively if that is indeed,
Well, he mentioned Mid-Michigan Community College,
Okay.
over
On Somerton.
right, Somerton and Broadway.
Mm-hmm.
And he said that,
It's Mid-Michigan College now.
well, Mid-Michigan
But-
College. He said that the charter schools fall in the same thing as the universities.
Mm.
And I would say, trust but
Verify.
verify.
Yeah, but that's a good point, just to make sure. yeah.
All right. All set, Tim?
Yes, thanks.
All right, Norm,
I have nothing tonight. I'm going to let Lisa loose here.
speak your mind. I will like to
Get the
remind
notes.
Lisa, it is 8:54.
It'll take as long as it takes for Lisa to get her voice heard.
You have 3 minutes for each
I
point.
had a comment. That was one of them. Okay, the other one is the election training. The 23rd of January, 5 p.m., 28th at 9 a.m. Now we have, Jennifer worked on it, and it's now on our website under the clerk. You just click the little clerk tab and pops right up.
I saw it today.
Election inspection information. Good job. Looks good. And then the other one is, I would like us to form a committee for the manager performance evaluation, annual compensation, the process we use, the evaluation we use, because we all agreed that the evaluation was not, so. Would you like me to make a motion?
The tool, right? The tool that was used?
Yeah, the tool, we, work on that.
Yeah. Tim had brought up earlier, I believe, our special use requirements. There's a few of them on there that I just scratch my head because they don't make any sense.
Well, people were talking about objectivity, and when you look at some of them, they're not objectifiable per se. And
Yeah, it's like,
they're more
yeah,
subjective.
yeah, it's like, I guess so.
Is it an asset or not? I mean, how do you determine that, and in whose eyes? So, yeah, there are some things. And yet, in the same token, I think there were things that right now, based on a special use permit and the 10 criteria, where there would be some no's from all of us regarding that. So, but yeah, that should be looked at too.
That's
when
going to
they're-
be looked at
Is it
in the
gonna-
planning commission.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you start getting around like the 9th and 10th on that thing, and then you just read it fast because there's no
Anybody in
answers to it.
agreement to my
So,
comment or no?
in all the zoning ordinance that we have, the one area that's really subjective is intentionally so, I think, the SUPs. I mean, that's why that's there. And
Yeah.
And those are the ones, those ones that are
that,
contentious and most
that you
difficult
hope
for
the
us.
people are in place to make the decision, does this fit in this place? Is
Well,
it
the
har-
gentleman
And-
this evening brought that up, I thought, very, very succinctly. 'Cause it's not for me to say that it's up for you folks to make that decision.
Not my comment.
So,
What's that?
They're not talking about my comment.
No.
They're talking about other things.
Okay.
so, yeah. So bringing it back to
Okay.
Lisa's comment on the survey and that we use as a tool to help us come up with whether the manager, the duties of the manager and performance-wise. I mean, I don't see why we shouldn't take that and try to, look at it and at least look at it. But that's my
Does
thoughts on
anybody
bringing
else
that back
agree
to that.
too?
So,
And I'm assuming the
Yeah.
purpose is to make a better tool so that
Yeah.
we do a
Yeah.
better job of giving feedback
Yeah.
to the manager and
And to
better.
improve our policy governance.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and better ways to benchmark.
Yes.
yes.
So your thoughts are to bring that up for discussion, or are we
Oh,
deciding on that right now?
Well, I can make a motion to start a committee for the manager performance evaluation annual compensation process we use. There we go. That's what I have.
Let's support it.
Motion support. So, discussion. We've had
First
enough.
thing comes to my mind, I would not want to support it right now. I would want to see it on an agenda.
Yeah, I think so too.
Mhm.
Maybe something a little bit more
Yeah,
formal put together.
It might be helpful to get direction and set of parameters and goals. I mean, because I'm supportive of the idea, but it could also be, depending on the direction it took, it could be a negative thing. We want it to be a positive
Correct.
thing, and that's what I think I'm hearing from Trustee Cody, correct? That we want this to build a better tool.
Yes.
And I think having input, if we're going to form a subcommittee that's, say, 2 or 3 members, it'd be good to get direction from the board as a whole of what the goals are, and so I would like to see that too, I guess, the
You're
additional
allowed to
step.
create the committees. I think you'd want to make sure you're specific in the charge you're
Charge.
giving the committee. There has been discussion going back, I think, each year that I've been here regarding the process used for the annual performance review for the manager's position. It is spoken to in the governance, policy governance, in terms of what the manager's reviewed against. So as you're talking about the charge, you may need to be looking at policy governance as well. And I'm just going off what you said a moment ago. You were talking about the process and the tool, if that's a form, or there's also the process. You guys have received forms before to fill out. Whether or not you fill them out or not, you know, your committee's not going to be able to help you with that. I don't think, but you also mentioned compensation, and the issue is, the first issue has been the process of the performance review. People completing it, how's it discussed by the board and all that. And then there's there's an annual discussion on it, what, if anything, the manager's compensation should change by. And that often is a different discussion, because that's a two-way thing per my employment agreement. The performance review, in a good system, you don't even necessarily equate reviewing annual performance with compensation, because even if you had no money to spend on increasing compensation, you should still be doing annual performance reviews. So I just mentioned that so that when you do discuss it, you can have thought about some of these things.
We kind of struggle and we try to recall. But my belief is our monitoring reports that we're going through monthly, I think whether it's the 2.0 and the 4.0 group, or the 1.0 and the 3.0 group, those tie to the manager. And so that monitoring is continuous, and if we utilize that right, we should be very prepared to have a conversation and not struggle at all when we have a kind of a official performance evaluation, typically that's taking place at the end of the year. Things that we've been noting through the year, through our monitoring reports. So it should make it real easy for us if we utilize those monitoring reports. And that is truly the basis of, is our, for policy governance, is our manager accomplishing the visions that we set forth. And if things are off track, we don't hit a brick wall at the end of the year and say, you missed this, this, and this. It's a continuous tool that helps assure that both the board and the manager and the township are successful.
But what I was talking to Pete Tolis the other day, and I don't want to talk to you about this, Brian. As far as evaluations go, I agree with Lisa. Maybe we need a committee to get together, because like the city, Pete told me that they just did an evaluation on the city manager, and I said, well, who do you turn that into? And he said, the human resources director. Well, Mark's our human resources director, and he's also the one we're evaluating, so you turn your performance evaluation into the person that you're evaluating. Well, they turn theirs into human resources, and then the human resources director tallies everything up and then gives her a report on the evaluation. And I know, like I've talked to you before, Brian, like when we're evaluating, the person we're evaluating is sitting here listening to us when we're evaluating them. And you said that, like, I think you said, like, in the last board, you said that didn't Brian Smith get up and leave the room?
That was during the compensation.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that was during compensation. Once we got into that aspect and the previous manager had given his request, he stepped out so we could deliberate our perspective on it.
Mhm.
But I think it was only in that portion of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't, I,
All right.
I'm done.
So I can put this on the agenda for some future meeting to
Mhm.
discuss the creation of a committee.
Sure.
I was gonna say, we do have a motion and support, so they would have to table
Retract
it.
the motion.
Or
Retract it. Just
retract.
Put it on the next one.
Okay.
That's fine. I just wanted it.
Just for clarification. So,
All right.
I thought.
Rodney, your last name.
A nanny, like a British nanny.
Okay, it's N-A-N-N-E though, right?
EY.
EY, okay. Well, I've got 2 wishes for 2020, and they both involve you.
oh,
All
boy.
right. So, number 1 is starting the process of getting a full-time building official in the building that is our W-2 employee. Would be number 1. And number 2 is Bluegrass Road and figuring out who owns the intersection on our side of the street in front of Red Lobster and getting it a verifiable sidewalk that goes up that hill and connects that shopping center. So when I saw your Facebook page for your business, I noticed that article that you'd posted, and so I did read it. So, but I think that, I'm excited that you're here because, you know, this is something that we've discussed for a long period of time, and there never seems to be any movement in that direction. And I'm hopeful that you can start looking into it and maybe begin the process.
And I'm excited as well, and you know, Ben, I cannot not. You know, I agree with those sentiments. I will just caution you about if you're directing the department directors. I'm gonna have to say something, so that's
No,
why I
no.
just did.
Yeah, okay. Nope, so those are my wishes, so.
I think you have to be able to be cognizant of the charge.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think the wish can go to Mark, and Mark is the one who ultimately tells the staff what
Sure.
has to be done, so.
Sure.
just,
Yep.
Yep.
Incidentally, one last comment on
Yeah.
this, just since you brought up the bluegrass, and this isn't directed at anybody other than the board, but if you're not aware, it was late in 2012, with the first board you were on, that monies was first approved for all the sidewalks on Bluegrass and on Isabella at that time.
Yes.
That's how long it's been.
Wow, and that was that 50/50 special you guys had.
Yes. Well, no, that came later.
That-
in the
That
in
was
the
when
next
I was
board.
on
The next
the
Yeah.
board.
We offered that as a temporary
Yeah.
special. We're gonna pay 50/50 if you can do this, and we still had
Yeah.
trouble. But that was an issue
That was
that long ago.
2015.
Money was set aside that long ago, and we're still talking about it.
Yeah. So do you know who owns that property on the corner? Is it MDOT or is it,
No.
is it us or what?
So I do have a question. Just say the township had that as priority, we're gonna put sidewalks. Do we have the ability? Could a property owner say, even if you're funding the whole thing, nope, you're not putting it on my property?
We don't have easements.
Well,
Huh?
we don't have easements.
We don't have easements.
That's what I'm
Yeah.
saying.
And without eminent domain, we're not gonna get those easements,
And-
or them giving us those easements.
So the movement
Yeah.
at this point is not 100% a money issue. It's
Yeah.
getting
It's not-
property owners to agree.
Yeah, it's never been a money issue till, once it was approved.
And
And-
so,
Yeah.
And Bluegrass is
Or the board
one of the
deciding
ones.
they want to go down eminent domain.
yes.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
And
and
that's harder to get
any
to than money.
failure of
Getting money.
accomplishing that is a board failure.
yeah, and the Sidewalks and Pathways Committee, that was one of the things we brought up, was Bluegrass, and we talked to Mark about it. And, you know, there's been some discussion on things we can do, so, anyway,
All right, so that's it.
make a motion, we adjourn.
Support.
Motion support, all in favor of adjourning the meeting, say aye.
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.
I got a napkin.